Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's great to have you, and we're just really lucky that Rosie McNeil-Cusick fit her into her schedule today. So really appreciate your being here, Rosie. And this turnout is testament to a lot of interest in the work you're doing and equity in Colorado. So it's really, really great. I want to do a quick intro for Rosie. Her background is just really interesting, and so I wanted to share that with y'all. So Rosie started her career in human resources in the fashion industry. And then while working with a philanthropic fashion brand that was manufacturing clothes in sub-Saharan Africa, she realized that her desire was to be on the ground doing public service. So after volunteer opportunities in India, Peru, and Guatemala, Rosie left the fashion industry and joined the Peace Corps and worked in a small village in Namibia. So then upon returning from Namibia, she knew she wanted to dedicate the rest of her career to equity, diversity, and inclusion in public service. So prior to becoming the Statewide Equity Director in 2022, I think it might have been 23, I'm not sure, 23. Okay, she held DEI positions at Mile High United Way and with the City of Colorado Springs. So Rosie has a Master's of Public Administration from the University of Colorado, Denver, and a Diversity and Inclusion Certificate from Cornell University. So pretty fun backgrounds. So Rosie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michelle. I am so excited to be here. I know a few of you on the call. I'm so good to see you again. And for those of you I haven't met, it's just a matter of time. And so again, very excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen really quick. First, what I like to do just in conversations like these with folks is just tell you a little bit about myself, and not necessarily my work experience, but really my why for equity, diversity, and inclusion. Because I think what brings so many people to this space is deeply personal, but also vastly different, which I think can be really, really important in kind of understanding the context of why we push for systemic inequities to be balanced. So a little bit about me and kind of what brought me to this work. I am a mixed American. My mom is a Black American. My dad is white. And I grew up with my mom as a single mom in Las Vegas, Nevada. But an important thing to know about my mom is she was also born during Jim Crow, and right at the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. And so as one of 8, in a tiny little town in the middle of Ohio that was segregated. And when I say segregated, I mean literally built a highway down the middle of the town to separate the haves from the have-nots. Still to this day, 2024, there is ice cream shops we do not go to in this town as Black Americans. And so despite the many barriers that my mom had in place, my mom grew up to be a FBI agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a special agent, and worked in law enforcement for the entirety of her career. And so public service was always a huge part of the conversation that we had, either at, I won't lie and say it was the dining room table because we did not eat in front of the dining room table, but while we were getting ready together or hanging out, public service was always a big part of the conversation. Or driving to school, my mom talking to me about being the only person in the room that looked like her. If that was being the only female agent, if it was being the only Black agent, if it was being the only female Black agent, she was often the only one representing the entirety of an identity on her shoulders. And so that was pretty profound for me. And I have no idea why I wanted to go into the fashion industry rather than go into public service right away. It's probably the creative side of me and my love for all things beautiful. But it was really my driving force to wanting to be in this work, because what I realized pretty quickly on was that it was systemic things that needed to be tackled to ensure that I'm not the only one in the room. My mom's not the only one in the room. My daughter's not the only one in the room. And so it's definitely what her and her story is definitely what led me here today. Um, but that's just a little bit about me. Like Michelle said, I came to this office in actually today is my day anniversary, my year anniversary. April 24th of 2023 was my first day working for the Statewide Equity Office. We are a brand new office with the state of Colorado. We sit in the Department of Personnel Administration. We sit within the agency that creates the policies and practices for the other agencies to follow or guide them, essentially. And really, the mission of our team is to advance equitable practices throughout the state of Colorado through data-driven decisions, community engagement, policy development, ongoing education, and equity and procurement to improve access and organizational effectiveness. So there are four main areas of our office. We have accessibility, community engagement, supplier diversity, internal strategy, and then we have communications and data, which inform all of our four main functions. And I've got to be 100% honest with you all, and for my fellow practitioners in the space that are sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is a lot of resources for an equity office. You're right. For all of my career, I've pretty much been the only one working in the equity space where I was representing that organization. And so to have these types of resources at the state, I commend the state tremendously for really putting their money where their mouth is and really prioritizing this work. So our team values are inclusivity, service, teamwork, integrity, responsiveness, transparency, community, and opportunity. And what's really interesting about the Statewide Equity Office and our specific agency that we sit within is Department of Personnel Administration is typically viewed as more of an internal resource for folks. We are pretty much one of the only entities that have an external facing component as well. So the way we really view the work that we do, and Michelle and Sol can attest to this, is being a part of our suppliers diversity group that we had last summer, is essentially we really view community as the forefront of what we're trying to accomplish. And so we ask community about all decision-making practices across our four programmatic areas. So we have, we're in the process of creating our communities of practice. And so essentially what they do is they come together, create recommendations that are equity related for the state of Colorado, whether it be accessibility, supplier diversity, kind of workforce EDIA, or community engagement. They'll create those recommendations, provide those recommendations to state agencies directly. So we have community members, and then we also have state agency professionals that work in those spaces. So if you're an accessibility community of practice, you might be an ADA coordinator. If you are on our supplier diversity community of practice, you might be a procurement official, so on and so forth. And so we have community members with lived experience, professional experience, oftentimes a matter of both, come together, offer recommendations to those state agencies about what they can do to progress equity according to those four main areas. And then the Statewide Equity Office takes those recommendations, create tools and processes to push out those recommendations to agencies, which then those agencies that are much more public facing than DPA push the outcomes of them to community. And so the cycle kind of continues, which is why you kind of see our wheel here. So we really view all of our decision making starting with community, coming to the Statewide Equity Office to provide the tools to the agencies. Agencies utilize the tools, and it pushes back out to community, and the cycle continues. Which is, I was telling Michelle, I do this presentation pretty frequently, and I feel like it's so important to hit on this element of community informed decision making, because oftentimes our agency, Department of Personnel, again, is viewed as more internal facing, but we really start with community and end with community in the Statewide Equity Office. In terms of just our staff, we have a staff of 11. Again, that reaches all of those 4 main points. So accessibility, supplier, internal strategy, which again could be like your workforce EDIA, which also has a training component to it. And then supplier diversity, as well as community engagement with communications and data serving it. This is our fabulous team. Do not be mesmerized by our model shots, but really proud of these folks, and also just some of my favorite people in the world. So I like to show them off a little bit. But let's get started with a little bit about what we're doing in the accessibility space. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to save supplier diversity for the end of the presentation. So if there's any specific supplier questions, I can answer those kind of as we go. But in the accessibility space, we do a few things. Many of you might know, and many of you might be unfamiliar with, but ADA coordination is quite complex. And quite grounded in legal roots. And so, but oftentimes many folks that have the ADA title coordinator might be new to the ADA space. So they might be an HR coordinator that also does ADA. They might be a time and benefits leave administrator that also does ADA. And so being super familiar with every little nuance of the ADA is quite a accomplishment. And I will say we have a phenomenal ADA manager. His name is Kevin McDaniel. He's been working specifically in the public service space in the ADA for years and years and years. And I feel like he has literally tackled every part of the ADA you could possibly know. So he acts as a statewide ADA manager. So ADA coordinators that might be new to this space can come to him and say, hey, I've never had this accommodation request before. I've never had this particular situation happen. How would you handle this, or how have you handled this in the past? And we can give guidance and consultation in the ADA space. We work really, really closely with our community organizations as well. And so advocacy groups, disability rights advocates can come to us, again, provide those recommendations to our statewide communities of practice, and then we'll help create tools to meet those recommendations. We also manage a $500,000 accommodations fund for statewide accommodations. These are specifically for Title I and Title II. So internal accommodations for Title I, and then Title II, external building type accommodations for agencies. This was super intentional. We did not want cost to be a barrier for agencies to be able to provide accommodations for folks. And so basically agencies can provide the accommodation, and then they'll get reimbursed through our fund to make sure that costs are taken care of. We also do a lot of training in the ADA space to ADA coordinators and just people that are interested about disability rights. And then, of course, just looking at any type of barrier removal program that we can, if that be helping create a transition plan for an agency, or and a transition plan essentially it addresses all parts of the ADA, so Title I to Title V. And saying we would like to address this specific barrier that is a barrier to the disability community. We know it might not happen tomorrow, but it's on our list. We're going to get it taken care of, and we're going to find the funds to do so. So we'll help agencies create those barrier removal transition plans. Again, I'm going to skip this really quick and go straight to internal strat. So our internal strat is what you could think of as your internal EDIA focused energies, and we're doing a lot in this space. I think what's important to know about kind of the way we're structured in the government is DPA and specifically the Statewide Equity Office isn't always the implementers. Often we're the strategy makers and the tool makers and the resource makers, and the agencies are the implementers. we can be the implementers in spaces, but we also try not to play in other people's sandboxes if they don't want us to, if they don't want us to be. So we oftentimes will be the people that will train the trainer or provide the data, or provide the recommendation or the audit to the agency so the agency can carry out the action planning. So just keep that in mind as we go through internal strat. And so basically in this space, we do a lot. We collect every single equity project plan that is required by our executive order. The governor had an executive order in 2020 that asked every single agency, all 20 that are part of the Constitution, to provide a equity, diversity, and inclusion strategic plan. We collect those strategic plans on an annual basis. Those plans are also presented to legislation through the SMART Act every January. So in June, we start collecting project plans. We review all of them. We find what some agencies are doing at the exact same time to say, hey, agency B, you should talk to agency C because you're working on the same things. Or agency B, you did this last year. Can you provide some resources to agency C? So we collect all those project plans, meet with them, try to coordinate efforts because we are a decentralized government, which was something that was new to me coming from local government for my folks out at the city, county of Denver or city of Aurora. Decentralized, very, very different. And so we'll review those project plans with each individual agency and make sure that if there's any resources or things that we can do to support them accomplishing their goals, that we're ready to do so. We provide equity leadership exchanges to every single equity practitioner in a leadership position at various different agencies on a bi-monthly basis. We also create accountability mechanisms for data collection, performance reviews, things like that. So if you're an agency and you want to add equity as a part of your internal competencies for performance reviews, we'll consult with you on what that could look like. So we act a lot in the consultancy space at the Statewide Equity Office. We also will work with people through maturity models, equity audits. So if you are just beginning your equity journey, or maybe you've been on it for a while and you just want to kind of level set again, or you feel like there's a need based on conversations you're having internally to relook at some policies and practices, we'll take all of your HR documents. We have kind of like a form that you fill out with all of these various different attachments. We'll look at them from an equity lens. We'll also train you on kind of what we're looking for through our equity lens so you can develop your own. And we'll provide a recommendations report to you on various different things that you can change to create a culture of inclusion and belonging. We also do quite a number of trainings and educational materials. And so first we have monthly lunch and learns for folks that kind of meet whatever relevant topic is happening that month. So for Black History Month, my entire family came and did like a kitchen table type conversation about growing up during the civil rights movement and kind of some things that they've overcome as Black Americans. For Native American Heritage Month, we had a speaker, Dr. Karma Claw, come in and speak about tribal sovereignty. We've also had for Women's Heritage Month, last month we did one on the Barbie movie and the women's rights movement. And so we try to get pretty creative about how to bring people in, and then also how to make sure that people are always growing in their cultural humility. We also are in the process of creating a statewide equity, diversity, and inclusion training model. We're doing a needs assessment right now to ensure that we have data to back up the training that we push out, but that is kind of our next fiscal year big goal, is to push out statewide equity training. In this space also, we do a lot of data collection. So we have demographic dashboards that we provide all 20 agencies on a monthly basis to meet their retention needs essentially across demographic boards. So we crunch everything from uh, tenure to age to gender and kind of what their retention is through the entire employee life cycle. So from new hire and start date to your termination, we're collecting data for various demographic groups. And then our last, but not, well, I guess it's not last because we're gonna go back to supplier diversity. But for the sake of this, our external strategy, which we can also just be considered community engagement, is really exciting. And again, something that's a little new to Department of Personnel Administration. But we do a few things. We have annual EDIA calendar that we push out to all agencies, and it's across the state. And so this summer, you will see the Colorado for All logo and Statewide Equity Office and our partners and agencies everywhere from Pueblo to Erie to Longmont to Boulder to Denver to Colorado Springs. We're going to be everywhere engaging in community engagement and making sure that we have folks that know we're out there, that know we're happy to serve and happy to work with you on how to make state government work for you. And so we have various different community engagement initiatives that we are a part of. We'll be at Pride, Dragon Boat Festival, the MLK Parade, Juneteenth. And again, this is not just going to be in Denver metro area. This will be all across the state. Which is really, really exciting, but figuring out how to get to Pueblo and Erie in the same day, logistically a nightmare. But we've luckily have some resources and partners that are going to help us get there. And I appreciate the chuckle, Elizabeth. So we participate in a various number of community engagement events. We also have those communities of practice. And then we have a community engagement library for our agencies. And so if agencies are interested in being somewhere that we cannot get to, they can come rent out those materials, our parade materials, to make sure that the state is represented there in our various different communities. So with all of that, before I pivot over to supplier diversity, I wanted to see if there were any specific questions about those kind of three main areas.
Sarah posted a question in the chat about, is there a best way to receive alerts for the accessibility trainings?
Yeah. Let's see. Sarah, I am going to, if you, I'll put my email address in the chat, and if you email me, I can connect you with our statewide equity trainer, our statewide equity office manager for accessibility.
And it looks like Lydia has her hand raised.
Lydia.
Hi, Rosie. I'm relatively new to public procurement. I came from a lifetime of corporate purchasing. So I had a question about the accommodation fund.
Yeah.
And is that available to state agencies, or who is available? Who is that money available to?
State agencies, yes.
State
and
agencies.
then we are also opening it up for our higher ed institutions as well.
Okay, great. Because I know as a former software buyer, we had to buy software for accommodations and stuff, and I know that sometimes created.
It might be on my end, Lydia, but you're cutting out just a little bit. It's a little fuzzy.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat then, but
Okay.
Thank you for the answer.
Yes, of course. Any other questions? Okay, I'll pivot over to supplier diversity now. I feel like I need a drum roll. Okay. So supplier diversity. what's really exciting about this entire program is that all of it has been informed by small and diverse business owners, which we are super proud of. So we had a Senate bill that was put together in 2022, and it basically said we would like small business owners to inform this new supplier diversity or equity in procurement program. So we called together a number of folks in the room with procurement officers, and it was everything from LGBTQ plus owned businesses to Asian American owned businesses to folks that just work in goods and services and procurement and contracting. And we said, what about working through the state procurement process is tough? What would you need differently for it to be more successful for you? Because we understand the economic impact that happens when we include diverse suppliers. And I love Lydia's title, supplier inclusion. I'm like, we need to use that. We might steal that. But with all of that said, we've developed a program based on the recommendations from these business owners, from these industry professionals, and we put our program together based off of their recommendations. So a few things in this space. We have a procurement help desk that is up and running as we speak. And so basically, any type of procurement questions you have about going through the process, you can come to our help desk and we will answer any type of question for you, or we will transfer you to the person that we know has the correct answer. This was very intentionally not put within the central procurement office because we wanted there to be a neutral party that could help small businesses through the process. So there would be no bias informing solicitations or bids. And so basically you can call our help desk, or we call it the help desk, the procurement navigator or supplier diversity navigator. You can call that navigator, you can email that navigator, and we'll help you through this entire state procurement process. You can call as many times as you want. We also have a $2 million bond assistance program that is up and running. And so I know Sol and Michelle like only heard about these things in theory. They're actually in practice now, which is so exciting. And so we have a $2 million bond assistance program that we are able to provide our construction partners. And it is, again, completely removed from the solicitation process. So the purchasing agent and the contract manager that may be looking at your specific bid has no idea that you're even going through our bond assistance program. We handle all of that for you. And then we send you over to our brokerage firm once you meet the recommendations of our bond assistance program. If you meet the recommendations, we give you the thumbs up for the brokerage firm. Brokerage firm passes along the bond, and we keep it moving. So there's literally no influence whatsoever in the bonding. We also are working on a working capital program for small businesses, which is really exciting. We're doing this with OEdit and the Small Business Administrator, which is great. We are also in the process of requesting a new disparity report. So disparity reports quite costly, quite costly, and so we are in the process of submitting budgeting requests for a new disparity report that would help us look at potential goals for small businesses and small and diverse businesses. I'm working with the state of Colorado. A few other things that we're doing in this space is we are creating a supplier diversity training for literally anybody that purchases anything within the state of Colorado. So if you have a P card, we're going to ask you to take a supplier diversity training so you understand where your dollar goes when it goes to a small business. If you are a purchasing agent, we're going to ask you to go through a supplier diversity training. It's going to be a part of these supplier diversity trainings is the idea that we're actually going to be asking contractors to submit equity, diversity, and inclusion plans as a part of their bids. And so if you would like to do business with the state of Colorado, we want to know that you're just as invested in the equity space as we are. And so, so we're going to ask contractors to submit equity plans as part of doing business with our state. And so we, of course, need to help our purchasing agents understand what equity plans look like, what makes a good one from maybe one that needs a little bit more work, and kind of go from there. So those are the few things that we're working on right now. There's of course more to come. Like, for example, we're trying to do some things with Amazon that help us allocate the dollars spent on Amazon to small businesses in Colorado. We're also looking at some statutory things for potential future as potential future needs, but all of that comes with the need for a disparity report. So there's a lot going on this space, but I'd love to open it for questions and see if there's anything I can do to help. And I'm gonna turn off my I'm gonna stop sharing at this point.
May we just jump in, Michelle, if we have questions?
That sounds good. Please do. Thanks.
So
Let's do
Rosie,
it, Katrina.
my question is about the supplier diversity training, which I think is phenomenal. I love it. And my question is, so CCD is part of the Colorado Community College system.
Mhm.
And I'm curious if you see that training also happening for your state systems of Colorado. Being a mandated part is something we've really tried to advocate for at our system level. And we ourselves as individual colleges haven't gotten there yet. And I'm curious if that's going to come now from the state as something that they would be encouraged to do,
Yeah,
or if you're not sure yet how that's going to roll out to the systems levels.
we're not sure yet, but it's definitely something we can advocate for. It's harder with IHEs just because y'all are on different systems than us. Sometimes we don't all have the same communication. But I think that if there's a want, there's a way. And so I'd be happy to definitely advocate for that for you. And let me, Katrina, would you mind emailing me your contact information and I can follow up with you on kind of where we end up going?
Sure.
Okay.
Just don't quote me if the system doesn't want to do it.
I know, right? I know.
No, I'm kidding. I would be glad to have my name attached to, like, let's try to make this happen.
Well, I just want to make sure I follow up with you. Cheryl?
Yes. Hi, thank you for taking my question. Actually, I have two questions and one comment, which I'm going to say first, which is I am so excited about there being a supplier diversity training. I do think that people with P cards, especially when I think about the Anschutz Medical Campus, like I really think that there needs to be some education about how to do that because people have that comfort level with, ordering from Panera and not really thinking about kind of,
Oh no, do we lose
community, and I
Cheryl?
think there's some amazing opportunities there. So I'm so excited. Anyways, so one of the things, and I love the idea it's going to be mandatory. Please say mandatory training.
We're working on it. No promises.
Okay. I just like it being, I just feel like, again, it will really open people up to broadening their perspective on. So anyway, so the question that I have is, I know that there are a lot of smaller business caterers, specifically are kind of coming to mind, who don't really have the, they're not able to kind of jump into having their own like store. They work out of these kind of commissary kitchens. And I was really curious about if you guys are doing anything to kind of help with that process. And I'd be curious to kind of hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, one of the things that we see as like the biggest opportunity for the state is our discretionary spend. Right now it's $50,000 or below. And so really advocating for those numbers to go to small businesses is, just as someone that tries to practice what I preach, like, I feel like it's not that hard. I know that's being recorded, but like, I feel like it's not that hard. And so, we're definitely trying to do a number of outreach efforts with various different chambers of commerce to make sure that we're meeting those populations and meeting those businesses. Because again, if you're a small business and you're running around all day, like coming to a training about how to do state procurement or what the discretionary spend is tough. And so we're trying to meet community out in community rather than have them come to us.
It looks like there's a question in the chat too.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Yeah, Natasha's asking, Natasha from City of Aurora, will that training be available for municipalities?
You know what? We could. It could be one of those things where we could share it with various different municipalities. Natasha, do you happen to be in Jeffco's EDIA group that meets on a monthly basis?
Our offices, yes.
Okay, because that could definitely be an outlet where we could share it with local governments, because I know there's just so many people that are already tapped into that group.
Okay.
And it's also one of those things, like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here, right? If someone has the resource or the training available, it's just a matter of, like, you know, putting the Aurora spin on it rather than redoing the entire thing. So we're happy to share.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else have some questions or a question? Well, while you're thinking, I'm going to ask a couple of my questions then. So, you know, the discretionary spend is something that all of the anchors here have embraced, as this is an easier place for us to make a shift. And one of the things that has been a big help in that, I think, besides our catering list, is Shop BIPOC, the online website. Is Shop BIPOC something that, like, the state could actually promote or share across, you know, across state agencies, like a link on an internal website, or, you know, some way that it's included, as this is a great resource?
I don't see why not.
Okay, that would be the deal.
Well, and I also think, you know, people oftentimes will go to the Panera because it's easy. They know it. There's like zero questions asked. But what if we just made something like Shop BIPOC just as easy as going to Panera? Like, and so could there be other resources like Shop BIPOC that are compiled? Could it be a part of the training on supplier diversity? Yeah, these are great ideas. And we are working with the Secretary of State's office, basically on an entire list of all small businesses that are in the state of Colorado, and then also various demographics that are part of those small businesses. So we're trying to compile everything we can through the Secretary of State's database, which should be pretty holistic. And then Michelle also has some great resources that she's sharing in terms of queries. And we're working with chambers of commerce nationally and locally as well. And so we're trying to get a more comprehensive list of diverse suppliers, so we can just be super intentional about what goals and initiatives we're trying to accomplish.
Could I jump off of that question just for a minute, Michelle, and not to get political? However, I have a question. Okay, yeah, like I have a question about, I love everything you're saying. I align with everything you're saying. And, you know, thinking from purely a business perspective and some of the very bizarre stuff that's going around, you know, going on around DEIB sort of out there, like, how are you navigating like that piece? Because as a large employer and large purchaser, we're interested in prioritizing BIPOC business, and I think there's some hesitancy, reticence, whatever you want to call it, about saying that out loud. And so I'm just curious. I mean, I have to think this keeps you awake at night. So so I'm just wondering, like, how are we navigating that?
Chuck, way to just dig in. I
I know,
like
right?
it.
Sorry.
Let's just cut to the chase here. I'm digging it. So yeah, like working in this space right now and the current political climate is challenging. I will say that me personally, I believe that a win for one is a win for all. And so if you are able to, I mean, think about it with curb cutting, right? For years and years and years, we had 90-degree angle curbs on all of our sidewalks. And then for the disability community, curb cutting became the regular. And now we're all like, well, why is my curb cut in my front yard? Like, I don't understand. And like, that is a win for one community, is a win for all communities. And so we really try to bring as many people to the table to understand that. Rather than saying you have to have some type of prerequisite to be a part of the work. And so when it comes to suppliers and supplier diversity, we're really looking at it and working closely with OEdit from a small business in general perspective, with ideals and focus on diverse businesses. And so if we can help all small businesses, that will help small and diverse businesses as well. And the opposite of that is also true. If we can help diverse businesses, we can help all small businesses. And if that is through various statute needs that need to be changed, or if that is through like our bond assistance programming, or just various different gaps that we see in services, and like our working capital program. The programs might be geared for specific communities, but they're open to all communities. And so that's really where we try to ensure that this is not just about righting some historical injustices that are systemic, which is not inaccurate. That's like objectively. But it is about how we promote economic development for all businesses in the state. I know that was
thank you. That was beautiful, and you had me at curb cutting, so that's perfect. I love it.
I know that was a little diplomatic. Maybe like over a cocktail, I would answer a little bit differently. Yeah. But that's my recorded diplomatic answer for you, Chuck.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. I need the recorded diplomatic answer. Thank you.
It's interesting to think, in this climate that the state does feel confident, though, to try to go, or your office feels confident to try to go after another disparity study, which specifically was designed to be able to withstand lawsuits around it. So it's like, do we feel like those disparity studies are still will withhold lawsuits? I mean, because I think that's the reason we do them, right?
We do. We're very confident in the fact that if we have the data saying that there are systemic inequities economically in this particular population, which is why we would like to create more opportunities for them, we're very confident in knowing that that will help withstand various different litigation potential.
Okay, cool. That's really good news. Are there any other questions? Because I will go again, but I want to give you all the opportunity. My Southern voice, sorry. Okay.
I love Elizabeth's comment too. We have also been using language like, we strive to support our surrounding community by purchasing from small local businesses that reflect the populations that we serve. I love that. And I think one of the other things too, in this space is that, buying your catering from Panera gets Panera's CEO or director or whoever it is a bonus or a new Jag. I don't know. You know where I'm going with this. Buying from a small and a local business helps a mom put her kids through college. And so we really try to emphasize that the impact of your dollar in our supplier diversity space. Lydia just said there's quantifiable data that shows dollars spent within our community and how that impacts the local economy. Exactly.
This has been an awesome presentation and conversation, and I'm just excited for the partnership that we're all going to be able to have with your office, and really appreciate your leadership, and also really acknowledge and appreciate the leadership of everybody who's on this call in terms of creating equity in the community. So thank you to everybody. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you all so much for having me. And if you ever need anything, I'll put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. Thanks,
Thank you,
Michelle.
Rosie. Awesome
you.
work.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everybody.